Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, episode 118. This is a podcast where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial certificate. I'm based in the metro Atlanta area, and I love to fly a Cessna 182 I like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, as always, it is my friend. He lives in the home of the bachelorette capital of the world. We like to call it the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180. He likes to call Lucy. I like to call her Lucy as well. Brian, good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's been a minute, so very excited.
Awesome. Also joining us tonight from the land out west, Portlandia, one of my favorite towns in the country. He flies a Flight Design CTLS. We like to call it the Egg. It's our friend, Ted, our sport pilot extraordinaire. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing well. Nice to be here with you.
Awesome. Long time no speak. It's been approximately 8.5 minutes since we were last together.
It's been a week.
A week
Yes.
and 8 minutes since we've been last together. Nope, recording a little doubleheader tonight because I, once again, screw up all the scheduling conflicts. And, you know, it's my world and everybody else just lives in it, right?
You got to remember that, you know, we don't have real jobs. You actually have a real job. So
I do have a real job.
We have
You're
to,
right.
yeah.
It is true. We have a very nice group in the chat, and they have stuck around with us, and we're ready to get into the next topic. Just a real quick update. If you missed the last episode, we will be recording a podcast at the Big Texas Send on Saturday at 4 in the afternoon. That is Central Time, 4 p.m. Central. And should last probably about an hour, and it will be held at the TAC Aero Hangar. So if you're in the area, we hope that you'll come by and join us. Or if you're not able to join us locally, at least maybe, hopefully we'll be streaming this live on YouTube, and you can watch us all make us fools of ourselves in front of 50 or so people, or maybe even more. Who knows? Brian, it's been a while. Why don't you tell us about how people can engage with the Midlife Pilot Podcast?
Yeah, and you know, I'd love to tell you exactly all the flying I've done in the last 5 minutes, but I haven't done any. I actually, I'm really good now about getting my logs right into Flysto and immediately having those, because when you have a bulk of them, unless you're a TED or somebody and you don't have, like, I don't know, if you don't know scripting or some kind of crazy, I don't know, or have like an army of Amazon Web Services available to you or whatever these crazy people do. You're doing it one at a time like me. It's nice to just sort of keep up with it now. We are not sponsored by Flysto, and it's obviously a free tool that everybody should use. But man, that's and I don't know about you guys, but when the weather's bad, that's a place where I go to kind of get my fix a little bit of reliving some flights and remembering moments and learning things and analyzing things more deeply than maybe I had even the first time that I put those in there. So, and I've noticed people more and more in the Discord or our community are using it and then pulling insights from it. So what a cool thing. They must be doing an amazing job with data harvesting such that they don't have to charge anything for it, because it's such a robust tool for free that it's outrageous. And anything that's that good and free is probably, I don't know. They know where you live. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But
well, you can always go to flysto.net/MPP. No, not really. Okay.
you can get 100% off if
Yeah.
you just go to flysto.net, and then you don't even have to tell them anyway. Yeah. So let's get this housekeeping, what we call it, the belly wash, out of the way here.
Yes.
Everybody, hey, we are grateful for you all, especially people in the chat here tonight. We're grateful for you all making this the best pilot community that we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, shared personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends or talk smack about avionics. Connect with us. Join our Patreon community from $1 a month, or do a one-time annual Patreon. You can start helping us out for 25 cents per episode, which hopefully that's worth it. You can access exclusive content, including check ride debriefs, killing zone conversations, and more on Discord. By the way, special shout out always to One Dull Geek for running a lot of these debriefs. He asks the best questions and makes that content really more valuable. So it's nice to sort of have proxy extensions of hosts of the show to extend outward and bring more in. So very cool stuff in the Patreon. There's a whole collection of content there that you can go and playlist and check it all out. There's a lot there. Watch us live on YouTube, Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. Share your stories, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. We read every message. You might hear yours on the show. And for everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. Boom.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Do we have time to go through the 30 names that joined us on Patreon in the last 12 minutes?
Exactly. No, but I did pick out a couple of things for the community spotlight
Cool.
on Discord to share. In fact, some of these conversations happened within the last 24 to 36 hours from before we recorded this, which was troubleshooting the Vernotherm oil cooler circuit. And gee, why isn't my oil temp coming up above like 140 in the winter?
Can I make a quick comment about that?
Yeah.
When I first heard the term Vernotherm, I felt like that was a term that a mechanic was using because I was an idiot and that no such thing really existed. But he just thought he would make up a word. And I just thought, I really didn't think that was a thing. I think he was just trying to fool me about some stuff.
What was
like
the movie?
Vernotherm Goes to Camp?
Yes. I was trying to think of Vern, like what that was from. Yeah. Second one was Trio autopilot troubleshooting. It seems like there's a common thread of people that have Trios that have quirks to them.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. There, in the last week.
Hey, look, I like to have avionics to keep you on your toes, you know?
Yeah. Look, you're not going to, get spoiled by automation when you have a Trio, right?
Look,
you never know what's going to happen.
Badly about Trio. I don't want to speak badly about it, but it is a little, when you're not dealing with a company that has a majority of the market share, it's a little harder to, it's like anything else, like a foreign car or I don't know, something where it's harder to get service and harder to troubleshoot.
Well, it probably wasn't, a $12,000 priced item either.
That's true. And if anybody out there
market
is a Trio representative or certified something or other, please reach out. midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks.
Yeah. Third topic that I saw, which is all related to this stuff, which is talking about experimental aircraft and building and build assist options. We had a kind of a long discussion about, would you like to build? Would you like to build assist? What makers offer build assist, that type of thing. And those are great conversations to have in the Discord. There's people that actually know, and there's people like me that can Google really well and pretend I know. So, yeah.
It's interesting too to see everybody's reflections on what they would be interested in or have done, because everybody's life is different and everybody's interest levels are different. Yeah. And so for some, meeting the 51% is perfect. For others, they want, and then it's always the, how much can I just build in my basement before, and just all of those questions. Yeah, it was super interesting conversation. If you haven't seen that, please go and check it out. Which, by the way, side note, it reminds me, have you ever seen the movie Ghost Dog? It's a Jim Jarmusch film.
I've not.
Okay, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. If anybody in the chat's seen Ghost Dog, please make me sound less insane. But there's a unforgettable scene, and there you can go find this scene actually on YouTube, isolated unto itself. But the main character, who's played by Forrest Whitaker, he's this kind of he's an assassin basically, and he's really good friends with this guy who sells ice cream out of an ice cream truck in his Brooklyn neighborhood or whatever. And but he only speaks French, so they have no understanding of what each other are saying, but they're really good friends and they converse all the time. And sometimes they fully understand each other, and sometimes they're totally talking about totally different things. Anyway, the point is, they go to the top of this rooftop of this building, and they're looking across to the next building, and they see a man building this huge boat on top of a building in Brooklyn. And it's up on the whole thing. And, he's clearly been working on this thing for years. And they're laughing. They're like, well, this guy's, how's he ever going to get that thing down from there? And then they just kind of say hello to him and all that. That's what I think of every time I think of people building a plane in their basement. Like, what if you just miscalculate, right? Like, then you get.
Well, I've got to say, I'm with Wendell Geek here. Two things I've never heard of: Ghost Dog and Jim Jarmusch.
Jim Jarmusch. Yeah, but yes, right. Jim Jarmusch, fantastic director. Check him out.
It does remind me. There's a guy in the islands. I don't know if it's the San Juan Islands in Washington or if it's up into Canada by Vancouver Island. But the guy's got a true sailboat, and it's up in the middle of the island in the forest. And he's building this thing. He's been building it forever. And there are questions about what you do with this sailboat, how you get it to the water, and that type of thing. But it's similar questions are raised. Yes.
What can I just add one more thing to this completely pointless conversation?
Yeah.
That we call a podcast. Anyone who watches my videos knows that I'm a huge fan of Charles Kuralt and his On the Road series.
Yes.
And there's an episode of Charles Kuralt's On the Road that you can find on YouTube, where he goes out to this rural farmer is building this ship. I mean, it is a bona fide ship. And he's using, tractor parts and stuff from cars. And it's just this crazy thing that he'd been working on. He's probably, when they were filming this interview with him, he's probably in his 70s, and his wife is all for it, fine. And he's talking about the promise of, I'm going to sail this thing to go to, I don't know where I forget what he was saying, like Cuba or I don't know, somewhere, and all this. And when you're watching it, you're just thinking, God, this is similar to the Jim Jarmusch thing, where it's kind of like, God, this is sort of a heartfelt thing, like somebody building something of such magnitude on this perpetual basis for so long, this dream manifest that's probably not going to go anywhere. And you're looking at this guy, he's pretty old. This boat looks insane. Like, it's just, how does anybody think that this thing's going to go anywhere? But as the story progresses, he gets it out. He gets it on the water. It goes. He did it, Yeah. So that's, I think, probably, I would imagine for anybody that builds an aircraft, there's a little bit of that feeling. Like, I forget what one of my hangar neighbors, I forget what kind of plane it is, but he built it, and it's a one-seater. And I'll never forget talking to him, and I was like, oh, wait, so how do you, I guess you can't really get checked out on this, he's like, no. I was like, so tell me about what it was like when you took your first flight. And he says, well, I took it out to the runway, and I did a couple of high-speed taxis, and, saw how that was going and everything. And then I was just doing another high-speed taxi, and then, I don't know, I was flying, It's like, at some point you just choose to just rotate,
pull back the stick a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to say thanks to Jason Sharp, because he either recognizes the movie Ghost Dog, or he's at least humoring you, Brian. And either way, thank you.
All right.
And yeah, we've got some listener feedback. Do you want to catch that, Brian?
Listener feedback. So this is from Oliver P. out of Montreal. Thankfully, it was sent to us in English. All right, here we go. Having been a passionate. Okay, hold on.
That was copy and pasted, by the way.
Well, I think there's some grammatical. Okay, all right. So that wasn't me. Okay. Somebody's in the document just cleaning
live
up.
edited this. Yes.
Live editing.
This is. We just would like to taxi you back to the hangar, please. All right. Having been passionate about flying since a young boy, including a stint in the RAF cadets in my late teens. That's Royal Air Force, right?
Yes.
Royal Air Force cadets in my late teens, through paragliding in the Alps as a young pre-midlife adult. Wow. Paragliding in the Alps. I mean, if you're doing that at any part of your life, your first solo cannot be that daunting, can it?
Yeah.
I finally jumped into real flying as a midlifer and begun my PPL training last spring up here in Montreal, Canada. It has been a slow but highly rewarding burn, supported in a monumental way by your podcast that keeps me company, resilient and confident along the journey, whether I'm driving to the airport or driving nails into my latest home repair job. My first solo came as quite a surprise in September when the chief instructor took me up for a pre-solo check ride, and upon taxiing back to the apron, called up ATC and asked, would now be a good time for a first student solo? I looked at him and thought, what about asking the first student solo himself if this is a good time? ATC affirmed, and before I had a chance to talk anyone out of it, he had jumped out of the plane, and there I was, no choice but to fly. Somehow, even though you had no idea who I was, I thought to myself at that moment that the Midlife Pilot podcast will be proud of me for what I am about to do. In some subtle but very important ways, you had prepared me for this. As we speak, I am in the midst of cross-country training, after which I'm told it's all check ride prep. Warm regards, Oliver P. in Montreal. Thank you for that, Oliver. That's massive. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm terrified that the thought of our podcast entered your brain right before soloing, or if I feel humbled, or I think for both of those things. But you know, I can say that for me, anything that anybody has said to you along the way that is helpful about what that moment's going to be like for you and encouraging, and you're going to be fine, and you know, you'll get through it, and it's going to be a little overwhelming, and you know, the plane's going to be lighter, and all the things. That stuff does come to your mind when it's happening, and you do sort of run through the Rolodex of, you know, where's my your encouragement Rolodex, you know? So
life flashes before your eyes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we're happy to have been part of your encouragement Rolodex, which is a new trademark term I just came up with. But that's awesome. Thank you, Oliver.
That is awesome. It is nice. And if the Midlife Pilot podcast thoughts keep entering your brain, let us know. We can probably find a good therapist for you.
Yeah.
We can maybe try to help you fix that. But
yeah.
That's really cool. I love those feedbacks.
The other part of it I really liked, by the way, is the, I mean, I know he's sort of making a fun of it, joke about it, but it really is so telling, the part where he says, I looked at him and thought, what about asking the first student solo himself if this is a good time? You know,
he didn't want to give him a choice. I love that.
Well, you know, but I think it's, even if you're on board and what it's so, you want to talk about, we've talked about imposter syndrome, you know, and if there's ever a moment where stuff gets real, because you want to solo and you're working hard to solo, and you've clearly done a few flights before that one that really proved that you were ready and all of those things, but there's still just that moment when it's I don't know, I guess this is all of the, I have now reached the level of training for which I will have before I embark on my solo. It is now exactly this point in time. And then you have to do a quick audit and go, okay, am I ready?
Yeah. Well, just remember, if Ted can do it, you'll be fine. So
That's right.
make it,
That's what
you
needs
can
to be
think
in
of the
your mind.
Midlife Pilot podcast in that way. And
That's exactly right.
yeah.
So tonight we're going to be talking about so we've already talked about boats. We've talked about planes. So now we're going to talk about jumping aboard the pain train. The pain train that is aircraft ownership. The trials, the tribulations. The three of us are in some form or fashion financially invested in an aircraft. And so we've all had our different ups and downs. And guys, I'll leave it up to you guys how you want to frame the discussion. What highlight certain aspects that you were not expecting, or what do you think?
Well, I think first, we've gone over renting versus owning, and these, the different, I can leave my headset in the plane, and all of that, which is all totally valid. But I think that it's like any relationship, when it is a lot to get into owning an aircraft. And we're not going to get into that this evening. And we've talked about pre-buys, and we've talked about all the, right plane, right mission, and, all of that stuff. But it's kind of like getting married or something. It's you feel very convinced about what you're doing, and you feel very principled about what you're doing, and you want to do what you're doing by committing to this aircraft. But like anything that you love, it is inevitably work on some level. And there are different phases and honeymoon periods and, whatever, all wrapped up in that. And I think that what I would like to make sure that we touch on is more about the mindset of ownership, how that changes how you go about what you do, not necessarily in flying, but also just in life, how you balance that out. And then also I'd like to touch on just what it ultimately means to commit to the responsibility that is ownership. And I know that Ted, you have basically figured out, I'm just going to keep 3D printing things until the government says I can no longer do it.
Is the plane of Theseus? Yes.
That may be the show title right there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like having my little 3D printed things on the plane in the areas where it doesn't matter. And my thing with that is I am determined not to use a single suction cup on the plane. And I don't have any. Everything is solidly mounted. And by solidly mounted, I mostly mean, 3M tape, but, still, it's that. And, that gets back to the things you can do when you own a plane, and you can kind of figure those out. But
let's take a quick step back. The reason we decide to get aboard the pain train is really the freedom that it affords us. All of us could join a flying club. All of us could, rent from different places, but you give up some freedom in doing that. And then
freedom to go broke.
Well, freedom to get into the plane and go pretty much when you want to.
That's right.
Freedom to take the plane wherever you want to and not have to worry about having it back at a certain time. Freedom of not having to worry about having the plane come back in the condition that you would want it to be in. I know the flying clubs, they probably have strict rules and things to try to mitigate that. But as we mentioned in the previous podcast, everything in aviation is a trade-off. And so having those freedoms means that right now, Stuart and I are in the throes of trying to work out having the annual done and a minor panel upgrade, trying to coordinate that in a manner which would keep the plane offline for as short a period as possible. And unfortunately, it's not going to work. And we're going to have to take it down twice during the course of the year. But that's what we have to deal with when we're in the category of plane owners.
Isn't it funny when you're renting an aircraft, you look at the avionics or something about the plane, you're like, why don't they update this, or why don't they fix that, or whatever? And then you get your own plane and you're like, yeah, it's just that way. That's just how it is.
Well, when you have 60 members to chip in to replace that piece of equipment versus 1 or 2 people or 3 people to replace that, it does make the conversation a little bit different. So, but it is a burden of love. I think we would all agree with that. Especially if you were to be on our Discord server and you see all of the conversations that go on about every aspect, whether it's an oil change, whether it's an avionics question, it feels like there's a fair amount of passion about just the venture of owning an airplane, much aside from flying it. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you have to learn so much more about the plane, and you experience you're just looking at everything differently when it's yours, and in more detail. I think that for me, and this maybe doesn't. Look, I don't want to. I very well might be renting and not owning anymore at any point, right? Like I'm a visitor in this socioeconomic space, but I can say that for me, I feel I feel a part of aviation in a different way. It resonates a little bit more deeply in a way for me to have, it's a partnership. I don't fully own the plane, but even that, there's just a feeling that you get that because of the level of commitment that you've put yourself into with it, that there is a reward or an energy that kind of comes back from that when things are going well, especially. But when those things are not going well, and boy, those things can stack up. It's like the universe knows. And so we're always very careful about talking about how well our plane is doing, or, anything like that. I recently told the mechanic over here at John Toon, I said, why are you guys putting, I don't know what it is, push pins or staples or whatever, but every time I'm here, I get a flat tire for some reason, And it's not the kind of flat tire that you get immediately. It's like I walk out the next morning and now it's flat. I didn't have a bad landing. What was going on here? So, you just run into those things. I mean, I can't tell you how many times if I were a member of, say, a flying club or was renting, there are times where you go out to the plane that you expect to fly and there's something that's not right, a flat tire or whatever it may be. And there's the end of your options. It's, you're done. Whereas if you're a renting a club, we're not trying to parallel renting versus owning, but I'm just saying you end up committing to a certain level of darkness as much as anything else. And it is something that it is bittersweet, man. It is bittersweet. But boy, when it's like having a car that's just, when it's running great and, you take it out on a Sunday drive, there's nothing better in the world than that experience. And I think that ultimately, with respect to aviation, knowing as much as you can about the aircraft that you are flying and knowing intimate details of it, I mean, I would definitely, I have not had to crawl into the tail of any other planes that I've flown, but I have laid moving blankets down and avoided being chopped into 40 pieces by sharp aluminum edges, avoiding rigging and crawling back while it's 100 degrees in the hangar to get back to, install something or do something and help the mechanic do something, whatever. And it's just, as much as that stuff hurts, I have so much more of a confidence in the plane because I've seen every bit of it and I just understand it.
Yep.
So yeah.
I'm going to grab a couple of comments from Mr. Geek here. One is Open Source GA YouTube channel has a great turn of phrase for renters. squawk and walk. And that feeling of, it's broken. I'm disappointed I don't get to fly today. And you walk away is something that you don't have as an owner. And that's a huge advantage. You're not stressed about it like they are. So I really appreciate that. And speaking of squawking, Wendell Geek again says, the hardest part for me as an owner is those close call decisions on what to do about a squawk. There are some that are obvious in both directions, but those tweeners are hard. Completely agree.
Such a good point.
That's one of the things I was thinking of is you have a list of things that aren't perfect that bother you and you're worried and you don't know what to do about. And those are the things that just kind of accumulate. And yeah,
it's interesting for me because I have those in my plane, but when I have a partner who really doesn't care about those things and is not willing to help me resolve them, I learned to let them go. I wanted to hit Pete at Niner Systems. I really like this comment. Last minute flights, single biggest reason for me. The Venn diagram of work schedules plus family schedules plus weather plus a plane availability was often resulting in null. Eliminating one of them helps.
Yep.
And that's, I think, massive. That's why if for whatever reason the beast has to be put down or gets sold or whatever, I'm going to go out and buy a Cessna 150 or something that I can get down on the ground with. I think there is something to be said to be able to walk up to your plane when you want and you're qualified and the weather suffices and send it.
I want to go back to what Wendell Geek was saying a little bit here. I really think that's the nuances of now the severity and the accountability around the squawks that you have. What is a close call? Like, what is a decision? It's not solely up to you, and you can obviously rely, and you should rely on a mechanic. And that's what I want to kind of fold this into, which is to say that it is it doesn't matter what plane it is. You've got a handful of things that have just been kind of nagging you, and they're hard things to kind of nip in the bud, or it's a weird part. And then if I do that, but it'd be better if I would do that when I'm already opening up this other thing, and when to defer, how to defer, all of that. That is when you should definitely rely on a mechanic. And I think that in the same way that any relationship is in the same way that I think a relationship is helped by your community or your friends or your family, or the construct in which your relationship sits, is the same thing with an airplane. It's you've got to have a mechanic that you trust. And I'll go ahead and say this now. I'm very much looking forward to this, but I believe that I have convinced our mechanic to come on this very podcast. And these are the things that I want to sort of have him speak to. And then I have other things I would prefer he not mention at all. So so we'll see how that goes.
That podcast will be about 25 minutes long.
The edited version will be very fragmented. And what I really like about my mechanic is that he doesn't have to help us. He chooses to help us and understands that we need help. He also he's plainly said, I will never work on another Piper aircraft besides yours. He's yeah. So anyway, it's to have somebody that you feel like you can text at any time, call at any time, and just be dumb with and comfortably dumb.
I remember that album. Yes.
Is that a Weird Al thing? Maybe. I don't know. So now I can hear it. So but that's what I really like about our mechanic is that I'm comfortable enough with him to say, is this, Verna Thurm goes to prison, or, what, whatever it is. And he will give a great, healthy response back to that. But further, when it goes to the things where it's what can be deferred, and we're about to go into annual and figure out what are all the things. And he just has years and years and years and decades and decades and decades of experience that he can call upon. We've all been doing this for just a flash in the pan compared to what he's been, doing for a long time. And it's so comforting to just trust somebody and say, I believe what he's saying. He's not interested. He's clearly not, we're not a cash cow.
So a couple of things I'd like to add to that. I have the same relationship with our mechanic. Actually, I have two sets of mechanics. One that does our annuals, and we'll take it over for an oil change every now and then. But then we have a local mechanic on field that does most of the minor repairs. And they actually used to be together. They're still friendly. There's a lot of it's amicable. So, but they know us. We know them. It's almost like you refer to your relationship with the airplane as a marriage. It's almost a similar relationship with your mechanics, that you've built this relationship of trust to rely on what they're telling you. The other thing that I wanted to mention that also goes along with this is that for those, there's some of us in the chat, and myself included, I have a partner that is also equally invested in that we bounce things off of each other. And we're very good together. There's some things that I've called him out on. There's a lot of things he's called me out on, and that I don't think this is a good idea. That's what I mean when I say call me out on. We can do that, but how about, and having that balance has been fantastic. If you don't have a partner in your airplane, our Discord server is another excellent place of people just saying, this is what we did. They're not saying, I think you should do this, but this is how we dealt with that situation. And at least just drawing the experience from other people is, to me, invaluable.
Judgment-free zone. That's the best thing about the midlife pilot community. It's really open.
I think a couple of things. Let me hit Prescott Flyer. Prescott, there, if I can say it like an Arizonan, who said, to quote Mike Bush, always, learn to be an owner in command. And it's such a great phrase, and it's a good way to put it. I don't know if your CFIs, when you're in basic training, said it to you, but it was like, fly the plane, don't let it fly you, and same sort of thing applies.
Makes sense too, because it's like, oh, I see.
Yeah. The importance of that relationship with a mechanic is not something that you have when you're renting, or that you think you have when you're getting into plane ownership. And I didn't find the mechanic that I use until I was a year into the ownership. And the person that was supposed to do the annual kind of medicaled out. And I, at the last minute, had to scramble and find someone. And that's the shop that I've gone to ever since. And they know me. And they know me by name. They know the plane. And so when I have a question or I need a quick little sign off, they just handle it. And I love that. One of the things that changes when you own a plane is you have to be able to budget time to be at the plane, to just, whether it's because you're loading databases into the plane, or you've got little chores to do, or you're doing your own oil, or you're getting a tire off so you can give it to the mechanic, whatever it happens to be. That's one of those things that completely changed. And that goes back to the open source GA idea of squawk and walk, is you don't get to do that. It's just you. And the downside of being the only one with the plane is I know who flew it last. And that may not be a good thing. So, because it's always me. So, yeah.
You know exactly how the last flight went.
I wouldn't buy a plane from this guy. Are you kidding me?
Who left all this garbage in the seat? Why did he do that?
Dude, is there an Arby's drive-through in the sky?
No, but like, again, coming back around to it and to kind of bring it home, it's all the trade-offs. You get the freedoms, but you've got to deal with a lot of mundane. I've got to go to the airport tomorrow to update our databases where they're already out. So, but that's for me, it's kind of a break from work, and it's nice just to go out the airport and be around other airplanes. But one other comment I wanted to hit, our friend Lord Alpha Juliet. It can't be a podcast without us at least mentioning one of his comments. As a board member for our flying club and part of the maintenance team for 4 airplanes, it's like having the feeling of ownership without the benefits of ownership, and 100 partners asking for updates. And he went on to say, maybe would not recommend.
The truth.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other elephant in the room, and that's money. When you are renting and you think, oh, this is so expensive per hour that you're spending, and then you hear people talk about actually amortizing out, let's say, the cost of the engine over the time, and it gets close to that rental cost if you're really doing it right. And I know, for instance, that Ben's getting toward the past middle age on his engine, and we've talked about budgeting the money for that, and that's not something you have to do if you're renting, and that's a chunk of money.
It is, and we're actually a little bit closer than late time. I mean, it's getting on up there. We're the plan is to go until we make metal, but of course that could happen at any point in time. But I've been fortunate enough and disciplined enough, quite frankly, to put money aside, and I am very blessed to say that I'm fully funded on my pro rata share of a refurb, reman, brand new, I don't know what we're going to do.
Pick apart.
Engine.
Junkyard special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certified pick apart.
Exactly.
Pull apart. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. My goal right now is to get Stuart flying the airplane as much as possible so he can maybe increase his pro rata and reduce mine. But that has not been working out quite like I planned. But I mean, you need to come into airplane ownership with the end in mind, the end game. You're going to have to replace an engine or sell the airplane, which is, perfectly legitimate too. But you need to be conscious of that situation.
I feel very lucky that I don't even want to. I'm not even going to say what I was about to say.
Yeah, don't say it. I know what you're going to say now, and don't say it.
Yeah, don't feel grateful.
Yeah,
just take it as it comes. No, yep. But it's absolutely incredible, especially when days like today, where I just felt like flying. It's perfect weather. I didn't have any plan. I didn't see if anybody wanted to fly with me or I don't know, nothing like that. Even if somebody had been asking, I didn't text them. It was more like, I want to go do whatever. And I think that all of us can say, irrespective of whether you're owning or not, that to even be a part of this and be certified to do this is such an incredible thing. I mean, it's completely insane that we are allowed to, by the government, fly tin cans around over other people, over cities. It's unbelievable that we get to do this thing. And I don't know. It's, to me, I suppose it would be considered peak experience, that if you can do it in something that you can kind of call your own, it's, I would say, kind of a peak experience. I can say that I, as a renter, very much and completely and totally felt all of the magic of flying and and was grateful for all of that during all of that time. And I may need to return to that modality at some point, and that's okay. But I do feel like in this side of it that I'm able to be, I don't know, fully a part of this whole thing, because you have to do everything.
Can I tell you, I had one of those moments this morning on a work call. tomorrow will be the 6th anniversary of attaining my instrument rating, 6th year anniversary. Been flying under a private pilot license since 2018, so 7 years. I had a call this morning and, kind of the normal morning huddle calls. What'd you do this weekend? And I said this out loud and I paused. I said, I had lunch with a friend yesterday in Sewanee, Tennessee. And I just let that sink for a minute. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. I would have haven't driven 3.5 hours, 3 hours to go have lunch and then 3 hours to go back. And instead, I was gone maybe a grand total of 3 hours in total or 4 hours in total. And that's after spending an hour and a half with you guys or an hour with you guys. It's still, even after all this time, I can't believe that I still get to do this.
Yeah.
And if it goes away tomorrow, I will not be bitter. I've already come to the resolution that I will have enjoyed my time. I will not look back and regret that I was just fortunate to be able to do what I get to do.
Well, Ben, this is an intervention. We're here to take away your license.
Listen, if anything ever happens to the beast to where it just needs to get parted out for some reason, I want to buy the interior. I'm just going to make a living room out of it.
I will say the reason this comes up maybe more is because I'm getting a little closer and closer to retirement. And I keep thinking about that Alanis Morissette song. Ironic. Isn't it ironic that I'm going to get to the end and then all of a sudden I'm going to fall off of a ladder from filling my high wing airplane and break my back or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just
on the next episode.
I want to hit Prescott Flyer's comment. He says, if you can learn how to land a plane, you can learn how to do preventative maintenance. Find a good mentor. That's very true. If you are in ownership of any percentage, is learn how to do preventative maintenance. The things you can do yourself that you're comfortable doing, totally worth it. And that comes back to the Colleal interpretation of 43 Appendix A of what a pilot can do with their plane. And that's one of the things I love is I'm just going to go out to the hangar. I'm going to pull apart the plane. I'm going to change the oil. I'm going to see all underneath the engine, see how beautiful things look, see if there's anything that looks weird. Just inspect the whole thing and just spend some time out there. And that's one of those things is be ready for that and enjoy that side of it.
Yeah. And you can scrape the frost off your wings like Alpha Juliet can with his fresh commercial pilot plastic card.
Yeah.
Mail on Saturday.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Best ice scraper ever.
All right, fellas. What else do we need to cover about the trials and tribulations of aircraft? It even seems weird for me to say. What's so hard about owning an airplane? I mean, 10 years ago, I've never thought that would be a thing.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen, for the good of the order?
No, we're good. This has been fun.
It has been fun. And again, want to thank for a very active chat tonight. You can join us Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com at Midlife Pilot Podcast. Tonight's parting wisdom, excuse me. Don't worry about what people think. They don't do it very often. Last one. So,
love it.
Thank you again to everybody. Signing off. Episode 118 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.